Beauregard Du Bois. Today you will learn about W.E.B. Du Bois, an individual who has had an everlasting impact on equal rights and the fight against unjust treatment. Who was Du Bois? William was born on February 23, 1868 in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He was the only child of Alfred and Mary Sylvina Du Bois. William's father, Alfred, left Mary and William in 1870 when William was around 2 years old. Also, his mom suffered a stroke in the early 1880s and eventually passed away in 1885. William attended the local integrated public schools in Great Barrington and graduated from Cyrils High School. Since he decided to go to college and couldn't afford it, the congregation of his childhood church actually raised the money to pay for his tuition. Du Bois went to attend Fisk University, a predominantly black university in Nashville, Tennessee. It was while living in Tennessee Du Bois would first experience Southern racism. After graduating from Fisk, Du Bois went to Harvard and received his second bachelor's degree, and after that he was offered a scholarship to attend sociology graduate school also in Harvard. Through graduate school, he would go to the University of Berlin on a fellowship for graduate work. It was while traveling throughout Europe for graduate work he studied some of the nation's prominent social scientists such as Gustav Schmoller and Adolf Wagner, and in 1895, after finishing his graduate studies, Du Bois received a PhD from Harvard. Activism. While teaching as an assistant in sociology at the University of Pennsylvania, Du Bois was doing a lot of sociological field research in Philadelphia African-American neighborhoods, and it was from this research that Du Bois gathered the information to publish his landmark study, The Philadelphia Negro. This was the first case study of African-American communities in the United States. In this study, he helped undermine stereotypes of crime and poverty in black neighborhoods. Du Bois credited ravages of slavery for much of society's problems. Along with the Philadelphia Negro, he published other social science papers and hosted the annual Atlanta Conference of Negro Problems. Further activism. While attending his first Pan-African conference, he led the way in writing the address to the United Nations. This was a letter asking European leaders to basically help in the fight against racism, acknowledge and protect the rights of African Americans, and stop oppression of African Americans. This letter was adopted by the conference and sent out to various heads of state where Africans were living and suffering from oppression. Later, he would also oppose Booker T. Washington's Atlanta Compromise, saying blacks would submit to discrimination and segregation if they got basic education, some economic opportunity, and justice. Du Bois opposed this and fought instead for equal rights and higher opportunities while not submitting to being treated as lesser individuals. Du Bois became more motivated and inspired to further take action when he found out Sam Hose was lynched in Atlanta. Action. Du Bois decided to start taking action by first publishing papers criticizing and opposing Booker's stance. Du Bois did so by buying a printing press, writing, and publishing his own writings. He had to buy his own press because most of the publishers were on Booker's side and supported him. He published his work in a magazine he founded called The Horizon, a journal of the colored line. Du Bois was also advocating for blacks to stop supporting the Republican Party because Republicans such as President Roosevelt didn't support blacks. Du Bois also published The Souls of Black Folk. This was a collection of 14 essays preaching for equal rights for blacks and for women, while also opposing white superiority. He also in 1910 co-founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The NAACP was made to campaign for civil rights and equal voting rights and equal education. While with the NAACP, he was the editor of their monthly magazine, The Crisis. The Crisis told facts and arguments of race prejudice, especially towards people of color. This magazine was a huge hit and was being read by hundreds of thousands. It even helped him by getting supporters at an editorial in 1911 push the government to make lynching illegal. Through his publishings and hard work, Du Bois has had an everlasting impact on the social problem that is racism. His impacts range from his works having brought people together to fight the unjust treatment people of color were receiving to freeing African colonies from European power. He has pushed for equal rights of women, men, and colored people. Just because someone was African American, Du Bois didn't want them to basically be viewed as second-hand citizens behind whites and men. He was basically a leader for the Pan-African movements that were fighting for peace, black civil rights, and equality. Accomplishments. Du Bois has had several accomplishments throughout his life. We've already covered some of them while talking about his key publishings, The Philadelphia Negro and The Souls of Black People. Du Bois also helped African American youth from an early age through the Brownies book, which was the first magazine published for African American children and youth. In response to the riots in St. Louis where blacks were being killed by whites, Du Bois organized the Silent Parade, the first peaceful protest of its kind in New York. Du Bois also pressed the army to accept officers trained at Joel Springham's camp. Joel was a colleague of Du Bois. He was working to train African American officers for the army. 5 profound facts. Du Bois has a national landmark left in place to help people remember him. He is the first African American to earn a PhD from Harvard. He left the U.S. and became a Ghana citizen in 1963. He died the day before Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. He has written over 21 books, edited 15 others, and wrote and published over 100 small writings. However, The Souls of Black Folks is considered his most important and famous writing. It is a seminal work in the history of sociology and a cornerstone of the African American literary history. Here are some more links in case you're interested in learning more about W.E.B. Du Bois.